What's up, boys? Welcome back to a new Alphastar video. Today we're going to be having a look at the Alphastar Zerg, who will be playing against a master player, Toss player, who starts with a pylon on the high ground. Now this can indicate two things. Either this guy's a moron, or two, he's cannon rushing. And seeing that he sent his probe out initially, then sent it back, it might actually be the fact that he's a moron. Oh, he's a little bit indecisive. He sends out his probe once again. Meanwhile, Mr. Alphastar opening up with his famous 17 hatch, the one that got the Zerg Alphastar version so much criticism from professional players, as the most common opening, of course, is 16 hatch and not 17 hatch. Now we do see a gate first, but the second probe is making its way onto the map, and this looks a lot like a Forge follow-up. So most likely gate, Forge, Cyber, and then you start the pylon at some point to start cannons. It's the most usual Cannonrush, or the most common Cannonrush that I've seen at least. Usually follows up into a proxy robo, or, well, yeah, if it's a high ground pylon, it has to be proxy robo. In case of a low ground pylon, you can still just start an adept and then go into Nexus. But if it's a, you kind of pigeonhole yourself the moment you start with a high ground pylon, because, you know, in case you want to get a Nexus, it's going to be basically impossible because you're going to be full walling. Now, we do see the pylon going down, and the cyber core goes down as well, so this all looks pretty standard. And now we'll see, I guess, the cannon on the low ground starting. Yeah. There we go, indeed. And there's a couple of responses that are correct to this. I think in this case, skipping the third overlord for the Zerg is probably the right call. And then building 3-4 spines, 4-5 spines, single queen in the main. Something like that. Perhaps get a creep tumor going and then push forward with 4 or 5 spines and 16 slowlings and try to kill it that way. So really try to kill it before there's too many batteries up. Now, this is a little bit of a risky response. It doesn't always work. Another response is to expand away from it. I think Rainer tried doing that against Parting last Home Story Cup, where he just started expanding away. He did a little too late and still ended up losing that game, but that's definitely a viable response. Another viable response could be something like Nidus while expanding away. So you Nidus your opponent, so he has to remain defensive. And then you just keep building more drones and bases further away from the battery and the immortal start, basically. And it looks like Alphastar is just going to be expanding away from it. He's not interested in trying to break this, which is annoying for our master player, who is investing quite a bit in defense there. I mean, this is 3 cannons. As for 50 minerals. If he knew that Alphastar wasn't going to try to break him, he wouldn't have built these extra two, you know, maybe one, but not both of them. And there's also a lot of batteries going down right now, which definitely won't help him if Alphastar will never try to break this. Now, of course, he needs to do this, our master player, because he isn't quite aware of what's happening. Meanwhile, Alphastar continuously pumping out drones, and this must be a weird sight for our master player to see, right? Probably been cannon rushing for a while in his life already, and this is probably one of the first times he sees a guy just produce drones against a proxy immortal. So, let's see exactly how Alphastar will decide to deal with it. Queen production stays on. Third queen just finished. Fourth queen is on the way. First spore went down. I'm not sure why he decided to build that drone into a spore, but some decent micro coming out of the master player, who's very afraid, by the way, for probably a good reason. I mean, it's kind of scary to be on creep, out of battery range. Like, there could be 10 links coming from here and you just lose your immortal. The moment the prism is out, however, this should be a little bit easier for him, as then he can just save himself whenever he wants to. So we'll see most likely more risky movement at this point, from this point on. So yeah, we see him trying to target down a couple of drones. The funny thing is, one immortal takes 3 shots to kill a drone, which means that every time this immortal kills a drone, he needs to go back to get some help again. Alphastar just keeps producing more and more drones, and right now Alphastar is already at 37 workers, as this immortal is barely putting a dent into the economy of Alphastar. There's 3 more drones are being added. A spore is being added for whatever reason. Buildings, of course, absolutely terrible against immortals, because immortals do extra damage against armored, which buildings generally are. We have a 4th base on the way at the 5-minute mark already for Alphastar as well, who really has barely built any units. I mean, he's lost 5 links. There's still 11 on the map, so 16 links in total. But at this point, I guess the pressure kind of starts ramping up as there's 2 Immortals. And once the 3rd Immortal is out, he will be able to one-shot drones, which that is a little bit more scary here for Alphastar, the moment that drones start getting one-shot. On the other hand, this little battery farm, or however you want to call it, can't be used anymore. It's way too far back to constantly walk back there. So it's kind of scary to be this far out against the Zerg, especially if there's still creep. We still see a creep tumor here. The hatchery is still alive. So we see our master player just right-clicking this hatchery, and whenever he takes too much damage, he actually completely needs to go back, heal up at the batteries, and then have a go at him again. So it's exactly what happens. He does manage to kill another hatchery, but if you take a look at the supply, it's 75 supply for Alphastar against only 43 of our master player. And sure, the immortal count of the master player sure is growing, but it's still practically 2 base against 1. I mean, we have 16 workers here, there's going to be 16 workers here. This ramp is going to be difficult to move down. If there's Ravagers, there's a bunch of queens. The pool is being rebuilt. I mean, there's still 6 queens. And this eco for the Alphastar is just way, way better. And don't forget, the longer this game goes on, the better it will get for Alphastar, as these mineral patches will start mining out relatively quickly. Some nice arrests coming out of our Protoss player, who decide this ramp, going down that ramp, isn't really worth it anymore. Tries to harass a little bit, does get a couple of drone, gets a roach here and there, and I would say just target down the roach warren here, right? Just, you know, get anything you can at this point, especially if it's free damage. Does find 5 roaches and should be able to start pushing down the ramp. I would love to see an observer to deal with this creep finally, as without creep, roaches and links, well, especially roaches and ravagers, are kind of bad against immortals. Links still remain quick enough, and queens become completely useless as well without creep. So I think just getting an observer would be extremely useful. On top of that, our Protoss player really isn't spending his money well. I'm not sure if he still has a probe on the map somewhere, but I wouldn't mind seeing an expand in this location, for example, after clearing the creep, or even throwing down a robotics bay, so he can start some disruptors, or basically just anything, honestly. He has so much money in the bank that at this point he really could be quite far ahead. This micro is a little bit sloppy as well. I'm not a massive fan of how he's doing this. I'm not quite sure if this area is completely safe from queens. I think you can position 1 queen here and 1 queen here. You might be able to always hit this prism, but I could be wrong there. Now, at the same time, a second prism is out. Still 1100 minerals in the bank, and yeah, sadly no probe on the map, I believe. Which, oh, actually no, there is a probe on the map. Oh, he's actually gonna get a nexus. All right, so it's definitely a good idea here. And once again, this creep is just messing with our Protoss player so much. And I mean, Alpha's response is interesting, but the way the Protoss is doing it here is just so poorly. Like, he's so slow at the macro. We're not really seeing any kind of transition. The prism micro isn't all that either. I mean, losing, this is gonna be 2 immortals, losing them for free. I mean, this is really not rocket science, you know, controlling a prism and 2 immortals, and he's not quite doing it well enough, at least, to be able to deal with it. Alphastar, meanwhile, has secured another base, continues producing queens, is at 12 right now. Disruptors becoming less of a luxury and more of a necessity at this point in the game, because, I mean, what kind of units is there really? There's 2 roaches, 3 ravagers, and 13 queens. And queens die really slowly against immortals, but they die really quickly against disruptors. So I think a disruptor or 2-3 would really help here. Just anything with a little bit of splash. Like, if you could go into storm, that'd be great, but I guess that's a little too far away. Colossus even could be semi-viable, but I'm not a massive fan of Colossus in this composition. Oh, this is some sloppy micro by the Protoss player, honestly. Who does finally have a natural base, but still no observer, still no real transition. There's a second robotics facility on the way, but so far it just looks like it's going to be more immortals, and that's, I mean, it's not all that useful, is it? More immortals. We need higher quality units, not more immortals. This is the last thing we need. Like, there's plenty of immortals, trust me on that. Need to somehow deal with 17 queens. How do you deal with 17 queens though? Well, basically disruptors are a good way to go. Charge lots in theory would be good, but it's unrealistic to go into charge lots. from the economy that our master player is working with here. So I'd say Disruptor is probably the most viable option, but he's just so stubborn, so slow in his transitions. Meanwhile, we have a layer, which is being built at the wrong base, obviously. If there's any logic in your brain, you know that the next base to fall, if any base is to fall, it's going to be this one, as it's closest towards your opponent's army. So this base should have been the one turning into a lair, rather than the one closest to the Immortals. However, I guess if you have 17 queens, you can transfuse, or 18 queens at this point, you can transfuse forever. So perhaps not that worried about losing that base at the moment. I think that Alphastar could do, by the way, is once he gets a Spire, this game pretty much ends, as there's no anti-air whatsoever for the Protoss player. So I really do like the layer, and then a Spire follow-up would put a massive, but an absolutely massive timer on our Protoss player. Like even 2 Mutas would deal with this absolutely perfectly. Like there's nothing you can do anymore the moment 2 Mutas are out. Very poor Prism Micro once again by our Protoss player. And yeah, we do have the Disruptor transition, which is nice, but at this point the layer is done and the Spire can start any moment now. And I mean, right? No? Just more Ravagers, alright. Just keep floating that money. No? 8 Ravagers. Very odd decision by both players, the way they play. I'm very confused. 15 queens remaining, so a couple of queens did go down. We're at 60 workers for the Zerg right now, and I mean, I know Spire is better, but this army definitely is enough, right? We have, what, 12 Ravagers, 11 Roaches, 15 Queens. Like, this should be plenty to deal with an Immortal count without any kind of support, except for a bunch of batteries. Alphastar decides to take this base as a fort. Makes no sense. Oh, he's double expanding. So he continues expanding, and the first Disruptors are popping out now. Which is nice, because we actually are going to need some big Disruptor shots. Of course, Disruptors can one-shot. Oh my god. One-shot. Look at the units. The resources lost. Almost 8k for Alphastar, only 2k for the Protoss. But yeah, they can one-shot Ravagers and Roaches, but need 2 Disruptor shots to deal with a Queen. Here comes the second Disruptor. And there is a Prism, so he should be able to elevator it down. Let's zoom in a little bit more, see what our Zerg player is thinking here. It's like, well, there's a big ball coming for us. Boom. Absolutely nothing. Just loses 1 queen at least. Might lose another one, yes. Loses 2 queens. Yeah, very poor Disruptor ball. Will not hit anything. Complete whiff. And here comes finally the Spire. I mean, the moment the Spire finishes, I've been saying this, the game just kind of ends, right? Like there's really nothing our Protoss can do at that point. Like he has no anti-air, some poor Disruptor shots being fired off too, or well, the Disruptor shots were fine, but they were in the same location, and you don't actually, you can't kill a unit twice, so it's kind of useless to do it like that. Much would have preferred to see those being split up. There's a couple of Colossus on the way now, which is interesting to say the least. I think at this point Colossi are not that useful anymore. But I guess our Protoss player thinks different. Now Spire finally finishes up, and a single Muta could end this game. 2 Mutas could end this game even harder, but instead we're seeing more Roaches in production, and well, in general actually nothing in production. 14 Larvae are idle right now, and there's a lot of money in the bank. Instead we see 3 Roaches, or 2 Roaches and 22 Lings. I have absolutely no clue what's happening here. I'm still getting insanely triggered by the amount of creep that is over here. There finally is an observer, but he's not very actively denying creep. Like this area could have been denied as well. It's annoying to get flanked on. Like potential flanks on creep would be very annoying to deal with. I do like this third base though. This is a good play, I think, by the Protoss player, who sees the layer now. If I was the Protoss and I'd see a layer at this timing, I'd be like, oh my god, there's gonna be a Spire. I throw down a Stargate immediately and start pumping out Phoenixes. Luckily for the Protoss, Alphastar decides that this Spire is just for show. It's one of those showroom Spires, don't we know it all. Good Disruptor shots coming out, killing a bunch of Queens. Queen count falling down to 13 right now. But yeah, this is the flank I was talking about earlier. On top of creep, just you get flanked and there's absolutely no escape for you. A lot of the Immortals are falling. A lot of the Disruptors fall as well. And I am not one to call GG's early, but this looks pretty over to me as 5 Corruptors is absolute brain damage. It's insane. Like, Corruptors are fine against Colossus, but nothing in this army shoots up. There's a single gateway, there's no warp gate, there's no star gate. Like, the only anti-air are 3 cannons over here and 2 cannons over here. Like, how can you not see that just 1 or 2 mutas would basically make him tap out the moment he sees them, as he can't be aggressive anymore, and he's getting outmined in every way imaginable on top of that. This is just an absolutely clueless engagement once again. So with a quarter of his army just walks into 6 batteries. It's actually trying to make this a game again. As we continue our Immortal production now, a 4th Colossus is out. And these Colossi, they don't have thermal lens either, so they don't have the range upgrade. We see it. I don't understand this. I don't understand the 3rd Robo. Maybe I'm the moron, but I think 2 robotics facilities is enough. If you can't even... Like, he's 300 income right now. He can recall his probes here soon. Then he'll get a little... Oh my god, I recalls them here. Like, he's gonna be on 2 base income. Like, he needs... He needs different things than pure robo units. He's been trying with robo units for the past 16 minutes. It didn't work. It's time to change plans, man. Like, your opponent is on Corruptor Ling Roach. Like, Colossus Immortal Disruptor is not the way to go about it. Like, we're gonna need a more sophisticated army to deal with it. Like, a single type of production facility isn't gonna deal with it. What is he doing? Is this the harassing squad? Where are they going? It actually is a harassing squad. You can't be serious. He absolutely can't be serious. He's just splitting off 2 Colossus to harass, like it's a zealot. This has to be the absolutely most expensive run-by I've seen in my life. This is like a carrier run-by. He's gonna roast some drones. He doesn't target the drones. Okay, here we go. Clicks on the queen. What does Alphastar do? Doesn't go with the Corruptors, of course. This is amazing to watch, the decision making. Actually did get a bunch of drones. He doesn't have recall available though. Might be able to get a bunch of the links. Oh my god, this position is sick. Nice engagement, bro. But, I mean, he still loses 2 Colossus. They wouldn't have been too useful as there's 8 Corruptors and there's absolutely no anti-air to speak of. So, eventually they would have died anyway. I'm not quite sure what our boy Alphastar is waiting on here. 14 Queens, 30 Roaches, and 10 Ravagers against 3 Immortals and 2 Disruptors and 2 Colossi. I mean, the Colossi will die against the Corruptors. He's gonna need to kill 15 Roaches each with every single Disruptor shot, and even then he's most likely still gonna lose. Instead he gets a Queen and a half. That's probably not gonna be quite enough. As the Colossus start going down right now. Disruptors are still all alive. Some decent pickup micro on the Colossi, but that's actually the one unit you don't want to be focusing on. Prism gets taken out as well by the Corruptors. No, Corruptors instead decide to follow these Disruptors. I mean, this is a terrible A move by Alphastar, but it's most likely still gonna be enough. As the Immortals are falling. 2 Disruptors, well, 3 Disruptors left on the map. Well, some good pickups, some clutch pickup, but I mean, the income is just slightly too much for Alphastar. And if you take a look at the units lost, Alphastar has lost 10,000 resources more, but he's also been absolutely outmining his opponent. And a lot of what his opponent has been investing was in static defense. As you see all these batteries and these cannons. GG gets called and Alphastar does win the game with a very odd defense indeed. And very weird upgrade timings, very weird unit compositions, but a win is a win. So congratulations to Alphastar. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, feel free to leave a like, leave a comment down below. And if you truly enjoyed it, subscribe to my channel as there's videos almost every single day of the week. Alright boys, this will be it for now. See y'all next time. Bye bye.